Hi there. This is a look at my personal Bally Arcade Astrocade collection. This is part 14 of this series. Yes, I've actually made 13 other videos in the series so far, and this is still looking at box number 1. This is part 9 of that video. And in this video, I'm going to cover 5 folders, and those folders are letters and a program, Arcadian indexes and Bally check, an unsorted folder which contains letters, tutorials, and a lot more, a flyer for the Arcadian, and arcade schematics for the full-size arcade game Extra Bases, which uses the Bally Arcade chipset. I also cover very briefly in a preview basically of what's coming up in the next episode 5 other folders called Anderson et al. Archive Storage, in which it's explained how to save tapes in a manner where hopefully they'll last for a few years without dropping bits. Another folder called Astrocade Management, March 20th, 1981, Inquiries, Letters, Orders, and finally another unlabeled folder called Newsletters, Flyers, and a Dealer Kit. That's what will be covered in this episode and a little bit of a hint of what's coming up. Enjoy this video and come back next time. Hi, welcome to another video in my look at my personal Bally Arcade Astrocade collection. This is part 14. I'll be continuing to explore the Fabris collection. This is still box 1. This is part 9 of just exploring this box. The last time I explored 5 folders here and 5 folders here. We'll take a look at what I will be exploring today and a little bit more of what's in this box, and then we'll get started exploring 5 boxes. I wanted to give a comparison of what's going on ahead here and what I've covered. I'm going to give a quick close-up of the 5 folders I looked at last time and the 5 folders that are coming up. But I wanted to show how much of this box is empty now. This is 3/4 of the box at least, and this is 1/4 of the box. I covered 5 folders in the last episode. I will cover approximately 5 folders in this episode, if not 5 folders. And then I'll have, I don't know, I think 10 to 15 folders, depending on how you look at it, coming up. So let's see, what did I cover last time? I just want to let you know what I covered in the last video. This is video 14, so in video 13, which at this moment has been edited and is ready to upload, but it hasn't been uploaded yet, I covered 5 folders. I covered one that has wiring diagrams, one that has arcade projects, one that has lots of mail to the Arcadian from various people who are subscribers, and let's see, stuff to file, and finally insider information. And after that, I covered 5 other folders, which I'll cover here in a moment. Or when I say I covered, I will be covering. That's what I mean. In this video, I'll be covering these 5 folders. They are letters and programs, which is kind of thick, but I'll try to get through them as fast as I can. Arcadian indexes, and this is a person went through the first few volumes of the Arcadian and put indexes together for people to use so they could find programs and articles a lot easier, which was handy back in the days, and it was handy for me when I was putting stuff online. The third folder is considered folder 45, and it's called Unsorted Letters, Tutorials, and More. And then we have one that has flyers, and this one's very short, and then just schematics of an arcade game called Extra Bases. And I didn't know too much about this one, so I looked it up. And I did want to bring this out of there and show you about what's in the back here. It's getting pretty plain that I'm almost done with this box. I've got about, like I said, 10 to 15 more. Some of these I'm only going to cover one video or one folder per video because they're so thick. So we'll see. I still think I have 3 videos ahead of me, maybe 4. And after that, I'm going to be taking a break from Astrocade stuff and probably covering an Atari system that my buddy Rick put together for me. It's a 600 XL that has 64K of RAM and has been modded to output composite video, and it actually has some of the best composite video I've seen on an Atari 8-bit computer. And I think he found some plans online to do that and then modified them a little bit to get a better picture, something like that. In fact, he was over yesterday and for about an hour and a half. We played some games that my buddy Chris++ has recommended to me over the years. In fact, we played a game called Parallax, which was really neat and I'd never seen before. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Grid Runner by Jeff Minter. But I will be covering, and I'm really looking forward to covering these 2 folders labeled Astrovision Inc. But let's get started with the first one. This folder is called Letters and Programs, and that's exactly what it has in it, letters and programs. Most of the stuff in here is, I think, from about 1979 or so. Some of it's repeated and photocopies of some handwritten programs. But let's get started, and I'll show you what's in here. This is a letter, and oh, by the way, I spent about 10 minutes, maybe a little longer, skimming what's in here. And while it's thick, I'm only going to highlight a few things. But this first one is interesting. It is from a lawyer, the Boyd Pearlson, and the reason it's interesting is I will read it to you. It's from February 26, 1979, and this is actually a memo, obviously, and it says, Dear Bob, I have enjoyed my first 2 issues of the Arcadian that I have received this month. Although a good share of its contents so far have been over my head, I feel if I have gotten a lot out of them, and as soon as I understand more of what is going on, I will get a lot more out of my chargeable time for each office client on my Bally unit. Now this is crazy if you ask me. I will try to explain it. I set up one tape, I think it should be set up. I set up one tape with a list of all my clients, at least those I service often, and assign each a number and ending. So I'm not going to continue exactly how he does it. But basically, he does his chargeable time as a lawyer on his Bally unit. Well, that is interesting, isn't it? How did he print it? Yeah, well, let's continue. Here's some notes from written to Brett Bilbrey from Bob Fabris. It's a draft. Now this is interesting. This is sent out to people who were part of the Arcade user group for the Bally, and it's telling them that they can sign up and get some information, which ends up turning into the Arcadian newsletter. He says Arcadians, and that's what he referred to people who were owners of the Astrocade. He says, I understand the undersigned is a publisher. Let's see if I can get this right. The undersigned is publishing a newsletter devoted to the dissemination of items of interest to owners of the Bally computer system products. And he goes on to say what it will cover, stuff like that. The rate is $5 per year, and I think that was for up to 10 issues. So there you go. And a lot of people, oh, here's stuff on the back. I don't know what any of that is. Colors. Oh, that looks almost like a picture you'd see on a vector scope. Anyway, I don't know too much about that. This looks like something, it's a list of someone selling programs on tape, and they would have been one, Craps, Ace, I don't really know. It doesn't say who's selling these. You can get them in a group of 1, 2, and 3, or something like that. I'm a little confused about how this works. But the programs don't say who they're by. I mean, here it says, I don't know what that name is written as. But I'll just, some of them have graphics and some don't. So Graph has graphics, Slot Machine has graphics, and Craps has graphics. The rest don't. All right, here's a program, or a letter, a handwritten letter, written by Brett Bilbrey. It's 6 pages long, I think. Yep. And he just, I don't know what he's talking about here exactly. Oh, these are handwritten instructions for his game Reverse, Simon, the Disassembler, and the sine cosine function, which the listings for those are in this listing. So here's his taped or typed in program for Reverse, and it has some errors, so he tried to fix them here, or maybe Bob did, I'm not sure. Simon's handwritten program, and I think this was modified before it was printed. I'm not sure. Let's see what else we got here. This is a interesting here. Let's jump back here and I'll try to explain what this is. So this is from March 30th, 1979. It's from someone named James Wilkinson, and he's talking about something that ended up kind of being a problem for people who are trying to do some Arcadian or trying to do some machine language programming on the system. Okay, so the system has an 8K ROM, and he talks about a question. I would like to present a question I would like to present is concerning the, I don't know what he means here. He's talking about the pre-printed statement game over, as mentioned on page 25 of the February 1979 issue. And that's by Tom Wood. He says, on line 50, I have to use x equals 3159 to get a full statement. And what he's referring to here is he has what later became known as a 3159 ROM. So they changed the ROM over the first month, or over the first year or two of the Arcadian, and it presented problems when people were doing calls directly to ROM areas. It wouldn't work properly. or they had to know which ROM was in the system before they could make it work. And this is an early example of someone realizing that. Here's a typed letter from Brett Bilbrey. Oh yeah, Brett's name. Ding, ding. So yours truly, Brett, March 3rd, 1979. And Brett is a member of the Astrocade discussion group, and just recently, today is, it's the end of April, and I think on April 20th, Brett posted that he got some information off to the government, and he's got 2 more patents, and I think he said he has 70 patents that have been awarded to him over the years. Pretty neat. Let's see. Going on, he says, there was something in here I want to say. Okay, Tom Wood's program that executed the special routine for Game Over was very useful. And that was what I talked about in the last letter. It helped me to understand, better understand how to use the internal subroutines, and he's talking about in the ROM, but I have appreciated it if Mr. Wood would have explained more about the complexities of the internal subroutines and future issues of the Arcadian. And he goes on to say a lot more. So if you're interested, read that letter. It's a good one. Here is someone named Tracy Crook who writes a letter talking about how they have a program that writes out an octal. Now, octal isn't used very often, and I've only really used it for the change mod command in Linux. And you don't even have to use it, but in my mind, at least when I used to use Linux a lot, the command line, I used to use it. But he's talking about his program here, which is octal machine code load routine, which I'm not going to use, but maybe someone would have used. I don't recall anything being printed in the Arcadian about octal, so this probably wasn't used. Here's a program or a letter from John Collins, who wrote Checkers, and I tried to read this and I just couldn't make it out. But it's cursive writing script, and it was just difficult for me to read, so I'm not going to be able to cover it. Here's a letter from Robert Strand from April 9th, 1979, and I noticed here something interesting. He uses a 0 in front of the 9. You don't see that very often in handwriting. All right, let's see. So let's see, this is by Schwank, and it says how to convert programs with arrays to use on the Bally. So you can dimension arrays and other basics, but not easily on the Bally, or at least not at all, but you can do workarounds. So this is from someone who wrote in talking about, let's see if I can move this here, how to use if statements and or statements and stuff like that in ways that aren't easy to do on the Bally, and some workarounds to get around tiny basics limitations. This is a program called Sonic Satellite by George Hale that came out in 1979, and it's very similar in some ways to Missile Command, but it came out before Missile Command, and I've mentioned that before, but it's true. Sounds weird, but it has. But I want to talk about some of what he says here, and this is like very professional. This isn't just, this is a nice description of the program and how it works. I should probably cover it at some point. But it says conditions of sale. This person was acting almost like IBM would have back in the day. He says Sonic Satellite is a program of limited distribution produced and published by APE, which stood for Applications Programming Enterprise. Each purchaser is assigned a unique 6-digit registration number that must be inserted in place of the digits A0000 in line 5. Using the program without its registration number is not permitted. No transfer of the registration number is permitted. No copies of any kind may be made of the source code. Alterations to the program will not be considered to constitute a new program. And he talks about what the program does. And I would read it to you, but I'm not going to really bother right now. And this program doesn't use any calls to the subroutine. Everything is drawn with boxes. But here's some example graphics from the program. Yep. And I'm not going to go into it more than that. But I'm not going to think about it. I might have actually covered this program in a previous video, like a long time ago, years ago. Because I think it's a pretty neat example of a program that is similar in theme to Missile Command, but came out beforehand. And it's not like it was, I mean, I guess it was an original idea, but everyone seems to have been worried about Russia bombing us back then. So how far am I into this? This video is about 10 minutes so far, so I'm doing okay. April 14th, 1979, program from Strauss, I think. Oh, from Scott Waldinger. Not sure what that is, but I think he's talking about his programs here. And he's got, oh, this is a Brett Bilbrey program. It's a sign of a subroutine, and I think there's more like that. Let's see. Bob Weber writes in, and he wrote a whole bunch of programs back in the 70s before he moved on to, I think, the Apple. And he's talking and thanking Bob for something. Then we have, looks like, two more questions from, let's see. Yeah, this is a letter from Brett Bilbrey. Bing! It says, 2 more quick questions. Is there some way I can get more examples and detailed information on using the executive subroutines like Mr. Wood's Game Over? See, it was a popular program when it came out. It was very short, but it allowed you to do, well, first of all, it was an example of machine language programming from Bally Basic, which I don't think people thought would be possible before that was published, or at least most people didn't. I've had limited success in writing this type of program. What else does he talk about here? But he's included some programs which are coming up. Then there's Memory Contents Hex. We've seen this in a previous box. This is by John Sweeney. Memory Contents Binary by Max Manowski. Memory Loader by John Sweeney. Checkers, written in red ink, by John Collins. It's 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. And then we have, I think, photocopies of it. Oh, and then Memory Contents Binary by Max Manowski. And when these programs were printed, by the way, they were printed smaller, and they took up less space on the page so that Bob could fit more programs in there. And here is a letter from Gary Moser. And this one I think is kind of interesting. I don't remember it off the top of my head what he says, but I'll see what it says here. Oh, I remember what I want to talk about this one. He says, April 16th, 1979. I'm sorry for the trouble with the memory dump program. He's referring to Memory Dump Revised. I'm sure that in my excitement I copied it wrong. So he was copying it off the page, or off the screen onto a page, before people could print. Difficult. Later on, most people didn't have printers, but Bob did. So they'd send him a tape, he'd print it, and then he'd use that version of the program. I have included another copy with annotations that will help you if you have trouble. As you will find out, it only accepts decimal numbers. So often I got your letter, I sat down and modified it to do a better job. The second version allows the start. I'm not going to explain what that's talking about. He's talking about, I have found a good source of ICs. But here's his program. I'm actually going to show this in close-up because he's got really nice handwriting. But unfortunately, it's not easy to make sure you get the program down 100% accurately. I mean, all it would take would be, let's say, use line 150, for example. Let's say the program said go sub 20. There is a 20 here. Someone who doesn't understand programming might see that. Let's say he accidentally typed in go sub 200. Instead he typed in go sub, let's see if I can't get this straight in my head. When he was copying the program from the screen, let's say it said go sub 200 on the screen, but he typed in go sub 20. Even if that's the only example of what's wrong in this program, which I don't know if there's anything wrong, probably not, probably so, it's hard to say. But someone who's typing this in might go, well, go sub 20 doesn't make sense. Go sub 200 does make a lot of sense. So they might be able to fix it themselves. But someone who's just copying in blindly, doesn't understand programming, wouldn't be able to do that. So here's his program and its total. And let's see what we have here. Here's Clock by Jay Cousins. This is the program that someone had to modify last time in my last video to make it work a little better timing. Here's Ernie Sam's March 1979 Convert Hex to Decimal program. Memory Contents Binary. This is copy. And then here's Brett Bilbrey's original listing. And this is probably by Bob Fabris because he spelled his name wrong. But and the program is actually called Sign of Function X. And there we go. So this would have been pretty darn slow. But it would have, I guess, well, it says what it does. That's nice. Sine x range is 0 to pi divided by 2. And there we go. And by the way, in the original version of Bally Basic, people learned that they could get to the use the built-in calculator, but that was removed from AstroBasic. So I'm not sure if Brett's program uses that. Should show it while I'm still talking here. I'm not sure if Brett's program does that, but if he does, then it wouldn't work in AstroBasic. But who knows? All right, we're going to move on to another folder. Let's go. This folder is called Arcadian Indexes Bally Check, and we'll see what's in here. We've got some indexes that were created by a reader of the Arcadian, and this is a volume 1. It was created and printed January 5th, 1980 at 2:13 and 6 seconds in the afternoon, and that's pretty exact. And it's talking about what's listed in the Arcadian. And so examples, things in quotes are programs. So we have checkers, which is listed on page 41 to 42. Then there's corrections on page 47 and 90. We have John Collins. He's a person. He actually wrote checkers, and he's listed on page 41. It goes on like that. It's this long. So there we go. And this is available on ballyarcade.com. It was very useful to me when I was going through the Arcadian. And here are some more indexes. I'm not going to go over these in detail. If you're interested, go to ballyarcade.com. So here's examples of some of the programs in here. And let's say program random art, resequencing, Simon, and then Simon corrections, and then Simon corrections again, and slot machine, and then slot machine corrections, and then modification for slot machines. Pretty good little thing. Then from December 15th, 1982, there's some information by Richard Belton on his BalCheck program, and this device plugs into the 50-pin connector on the back of the Astrocade and allows you to diagnose issues with it. And here he's talking about he had to change the code for his program, which is a 2K machine language program that allows you to know if you have a different ROM, it detects it correctly. It's like a checksum byte. Let's see. And Richard's company was called RGB Electronics, which stood for Richard Belton and his middle initial. Let's see. And by the way, he didn't come up with this by himself. I think this was used at Bally in some way, and he either maybe perhaps modified it. I'm not sure. But the program is used in some capacity to this very day. There's some people who use it to figure out what's wrong with Bally systems. So here is something from Richard Belton, and this is interesting. So May 15th, 1983. So he says, on repairs of over 200 units repaired, only one returned to be re-repaired, and RF mod was failed. So basically he was doing repairs, and I'll read this to you. So he repaired over 200 Bally units. That's pretty incredible. If you would, when you can, please run the ad for the Bally check. Now able to test system 1 and 2 ROMs. Also updates for all Bally checks. Also under repairs, Bally Arcade repairs still $30. Now that is a good deal. Plus $5.50 for post shipping and handling. 1 week or less, then turned over. I don't know what this says. Go Dizzy? No, I don't know what that says. Joysticks repaired for $5.50. Now available Bally working boards for $80. Limited supply. Will include plastic cassette deck with keyboard pads. Anyway, interesting. I didn't realize that he would also repair your systems, or I didn't remember that anyway. Oh, and here's the back of it. I think this is what the ad he wanted to run, but I don't think this was ever run in the Arcadian. It's mentioned, but I don't think this was. Yeah, and I don't recall there being a full-page ad for the BalCheck or anything like that, which is too bad. So let's move on to the next box. Now I'm going to cover an unlabeled folder that I put together myself. I don't know when I was putting this box together in some order. There was a lot of loose paper sometimes between folders. I don't know how that happened. But this one's called Letters, Tutorials, and More. And what we have here is someone came up with a basic layout for the CX and CY command. This is where, so you can specifically place characters on the screen. And so here's a map layout of what the screen would look like. And so your CX values go this way, and your CY values go this way. And this is for basic programmers. Now we have a page photocopied from probably the 1980 or 1981 issue of the Montgomery Ward catalog, and it's probably a little bit later, and it looks like the white Astrocade. I think I've seen a low-res scan of this online. I don't know if anyone knows where to get high-res scans of catalogs from Wards. There's probably someplace I can't find them, but I'd like to. This is from page 374 of the Montgomery Ward catalog, and they're talking about the games that are available: Galactic Invasion, Astro Battle. So this is, like, Astro Battle came out after the introduction, or the reintroduction of the Astrocade, so probably this is from a 1981 issue. We've got Biorhythm, Music Maker, Never Released, and others. Here we have a silver piece of paper. So it's this was actually printed in the Arcadian, I think, after the Astrocade was re-released, and it talks about what the whole purpose of the Astrocade is, and it's for people who just got an Astrocade and aren't familiar with the Arcadian, even though it's been around for 3 years. Then we have a group of information from Anderson Research, which is ARD, and later would become, or maybe it was originally HARD, which stood for Hoover Anderson Research Design. And this is a letter that was forwarded to ARD from and to Craig Anderson from Bob, and this is a letter from Dieter Heinerman, and he's talking about modifying his what do you call it, computer ear, which could do voice recognition to some extent on the Astrocade, and he talks about why he does it and what he had to do to modify it, and he has a quick look at it. And this was sent to Craig, and Craig says, he says, Dear Bob, Dieter's scheme certainly doesn't require a computer ear, and he talks about that, and then he talks about some other information, like Bill Luce of L&M sells the same gizmo. Wire his color organ across the output of an audio amp, plug in a microphone, and again you have the equivalent of a computer ear. The secret's in the software, as always. As for the comment, one use would be to write a program to store the sound effects. Let's see. Then he says the computer ear 2, which I don't think I've ever heard mention of until just now, is a different story altogether. If the ZGrass 32 ever gets off the ground, we'll have a parallel input capability instead of serial, and we can deliver frequency data simultaneously with the amplitude data. Now we've got the real-time audio analysis and synthesis system. Unfortunately, the Arcade in its current karma, maybe he means formed by that, can't handle parallel information. And Astrovision has a new president, Mr. Peck, instead of Mr. Dawson. So the ZGrass 32 is on indefinite hold. So this is from June 28th, 1981. So even in 1981, the system was on hold. Let's see, he says, to this date, Sunday, June 28th, 1981, no ZGrass 32s have been built. For all the information I have on hand right now, they may never be, and he's true. Who knows what lies in store? Put your money on alternative engineering. And he's right, alternative engineering had something that actually came out with a keyboard, and it's probably the best version of an upgrade for the Astrocade because it had plug-in, you could put in boards and things like that. What else does he talk about? Oh, here we go. This is interesting. He's getting a cartridge development system from Nutting Engineering, which is interesting, from Nutting Associates, I guess I should say. Let's see, what else? What happened to Fred Cornett and the Cursor Group? All I see now is a lot of pressure on you to go in several directions at once in order to provide everything everyone wants to know about Astrovision's plans to alternative engineering's plans, Perkins' plans, hints, and kinks on using the new BASIC. I've already got 4 different people feeding me hot new scoops on how to make it, do things that Astrovision and Fenton said can't do or won't tell us about. Deja vu? And he's referring to Bally didn't give a lot of information in the very early days. Anyway, that's that letter. I'll cover that a little bit more at another time, but I'll put this back together right here on camera, slow things down as much as possible, because I try to make these videos as easy to edit as possible nowadays, just so I can get them done. And this is a letter, says to Bob from Al, think. Yeah, Al Rethmel. I found this information hard to read, so I didn't cover this. But this letter's from February 2nd, 1981. A letter from January 25th, 1981 from. Well, I tried reading this letter and it was difficult, so I gave up on it. But it's pretty long. It's a letter from Bert Holmes. And it's kind of interesting, but it covers a lot of ground, and it's too hard to read for me, so I'm going to skip it. Then we have Fun with Bally Magic, a tutorial by Brett Bilbrey. And unfortunately, this was never published, I don't think, which is a shame, because it's pretty neat. But it was, here's the cover letter for it. So the letter was written July 9th, 1981, and by this time, I think Brett was already working on his ICBM attack cartridge, which was released in like 82-ish, 83. I don't remember the time schedule. I don't memorize this stuff, you know. But I'm going to read the first couple of paragraphs here. It's easy enough to read, and you can download this from Bally Alley. It's pretty informative, but it does kind of need to be used with the proprietary Bally system manual, which he says here. But he says, Fun with Bally Magic, a tutorial by Brett Bilbrey. The Bally has a special register to modify the data that is placed on the screen before it is placed in memory. It is called the magic register, and it is part of the custom chips. It is set by outputting a value to port 12. And he does that there, and it shows an example of it. After setting this port, data written into the first 4K of the system will be modified and placed plus 16K in the RAM memory. This is probably going over many people's heads, so I'm not even going to bother talking about it anymore now that I think about it, because this is too deep. But if you're interested in programming the Astrocade, try to find this tutorial on my website. I think you'll enjoy it. Then we have, I think this is perhaps, yeah, this is for the expansion basic, and you can make windows on the screen using that information. And here's a letter from someone in Florida with lots and lots of questions. But one of them that was interesting was he's talking about using the Vortex voice synthesizer with the Bally. And in the Seagrass 32, there was supposed to be Vortex included, but that system never came out, obviously. Here is a letter from, let's see, someone whose house burned down and is back on track, and he wants to start using his Astrocade again with an ASCII keyboard. And he actually says here he ends up doing it. P.S. I have the keyboard working on my Bally, and the only symbol not available is the right cursor, other than Halt, which is only keypad available. And then he has that person included the ASCII code symbol chart. But what's interesting is he includes the data sheet for the system he has. The keyboard, and I've never seen it. It's an RCA system. It's called the VP 606 and 616, and it appears to be a membrane keyboard like the Atari 400, and it's an ASCII keyboard, and so he somehow put this in with his system on his Bally, and this explains how the system works. I'm not going to go into detail here, and this is available. You can look it up. But this came out in 1980. This printing of the data sheet is from June 1980. So neat. I've never seen this before. I don't know. Probably wasn't. Yeah, I don't know too much about it. Here's a question by Robert Rosenhaus, and he had lots of programs by that he wrote, and they were published by Super Software. And he says, in addition, I have a question. Is how can I resave a machine language graphic character without using the two programs in the Arcadian? I have a machine language program coming out called SpaceDoc, but I have not been able to come up with a way to save the poke values. Now, if I recall, some of this is worked around in AstroBasic because AstroBasic saves all of screen RAM, and so when you call it back, you get everything back. Here's another. I'm going to include this here. This is a letter from, let's see, James Wilkinson, and he included a stamped self-addressed stamped envelope, and with this little, let's see, how much was it back then? 18 cents, is that what it says? To send a letter in 1981. And he says he's just asking some questions, and he kind of doesn't expect Bob to write him a direct answer, but he does, I think, or maybe not, because I don't see it here. But he, in case Bob can, he wants him to use this envelope, which doesn't happen. Now this is a neat letter. I don't really think this was ever published, but it's an unpublished program called HUT, which is a football program. But I loved what the author, whose name is, let's see, is that Rory Wall? I don't know. I say these things because I can't read this. This is really tiny print, but once the person viewing this, they can see this up close and they can see what it says. But this program called HUT is from September 6th, 1981, and he kind of gives rise to what I think is amusing about football programs. It says, "Dear Bob, following is a short program designed to help anybody who plays football and has a problem with going outside." Now, who are these people? I don't know. First, the program asks if you are on offense or defense, and it goes on to explain how the program works. And so here's part of the program, and here is the rest of the program. So, oops, you can't see it. I mean, this program is really, really short. So I haven't even looked at it, but maybe it's all just random. Is there just a random element? Yeah, just random element. So super quick. Probably too simple for Bob to send. Now I thought this was interesting. So this person here, whose name I can't read. Oh, here we go. No, it doesn't say his name there. Diane Brad? Oh, Doon DeVry. He says something which is interesting for anyone who's looking for data about Arcadian subscribers. He says he's subscribing again. He says, "I noticed that on the mailing label there is a identification field that appears to be the serial number of the Bally I had when I first started my subscription." And basically then he goes on to say some other stuff about it. But it's kind of interesting that he noticed that, yeah. But then he goes on to say he's since that time he's gone on through 6 or 7 different units, and the current unit is an ABA 1002 with a serial number of 70,653. It took me better than 2 years of fighting with the service center in Detroit with Bally and then Rex TV before I finally got a unit that could be used for more than half an hour at a time and that Bally Basic would work on. This unit works well except for the room temperature is above 78 degrees, and then it doesn't work at all, even with a fan blowing directly on it. Man, what a it's so sad about the Astrocade units. In the next issue, could you indicate a few places where we can order the new basic cartridge? So, okay, he's gone through so many systems. This is from probably, does it say? Oh, yes it does, October 1981. So he got his unit, his first one in 1979. Why didn't he just get another system? I guess because other computers that were comparable were much more expensive. Here is a program, or a letter from Donald DeLissy. Oh, this one is something I like a lot because it's this person tells his age, and he has great handwriting for his age, I'll tell you that. This letter is from July 14th, 1981, and he says, "Dear Arcadian, I read on a sample flyer you sent me that a new human voice can enhance my games. I gather that this would be the attachment, but I'm not sure. I would like to have as much news about this as possible." And then he goes on to say a few more things. He wants to know, "I would like this too. I have a question about the keyboard offered for about $90. Is this keyboard like a typewriter keyboard? Is it easy enough for a 14-year-old boy to assemble?" And he's talking about himself, I presume. So that's cool. And then here's some, he tells, this is a draft letter to Jeff, the person who wrote this letter here, from Bob. Now this program, I think I'm going to read it in its entirety. It's long, but it's at a crucial time in the history of the Bally, as it's sold through Astrovision, or Astrocade, and he brings up a lot of good points. So this is from Guy McLemore of ABC Hobbycraft, who is a dealer in Indiana. And he says here, ABC Hobbycraft says, "Bob Fabris, November 6, 1981. He says, he talks about how we got some tapes. I think he's talking about the best of the Arcadian, but it didn't come with instructions and it needs some, he thinks. Goes on to talk about that, and he says, alright, if you're selling the Astro Basic versions this way and intend to do so with the best of the Arcadian package, I hope that you will reconsider. Given the quality of documentation and instructions with such lines as L&M software and wave makers, the Arcadian package cannot compete in the marketplace without some sort of instructions. And even though the number of programs in the tape does make it a good value at the price." And here's what he says here. I'm I'm still awaiting shipment of Astro Basic, though I should have it this week. Astrovision began shipping on Monday. So if Astro Basic was coming out, he's talking about it only began shipping in November of 1981, which is almost 1982. Well, as if you don't know how the calendar works. And this is interesting. I looked for this article, and he says, by the way, Creative Computing bought my article entitled Bally Who? The Rebirth of the Bally Arcade. It will probably be several months before it appears. I credit the Arcadian several times. And I'm losing my voice. I'll probably pause after this letter here. I credit the Arcadian several times. Now, I've looked for this article, so I don't think it was printed because I've never been able to find it. Let's go on to the next page here. Okay. Here's some interesting news. According to Jack Nyman, Astrovision is going back to the plan. And Jack Nyman, by the way, was a person who was in charge of Bally Consumer Electronics back in the 70s and early 80s for Bally. Astrovision is going back to the plan whereby Arcadian receives a number, about 20 to 25 preliminary ZGrass 32 units, which that never happened. He says, a rumor has reached me about Astrovision negotiating with RCA for sale of the arcade. Any truth to that? Having it owned by a company with money to spend on production, promotion, etc. would be nice. I suppose I honestly do not think the unit can survive another 6 to 12 months break in production and another delay in the ZGrass 32. He's right. Frankly, I am getting frustrated again. Then he talks about his worries. And he says, here's the problems that are still being faced. And he talks about all the issues with the Astrocade. But one of them that he talks about is number 3. The strange agreement between Astrovision and Bally's research and Bally Game Division is losing Astrovision many potential sales. Astrovision apparently can offer many of the new popular Midway arcade games, Space Invaders Galaxian and the new Pac-Man, but for some reason they can't use the original names. What do we got? Well, that about covers this one. We only have one bit more. This is from Clyde Perkins. This is from June 5th, 1981. And he says that the system is basically done. You can get a 62-key keypad and a BCR ultrasonic signal so you can control things around your house, and a modem, and all these things were available. And there's an OS which came out, which and I don't think he quite talks about it here in detail, but he does mention. I'm taking a quick pause here, trying to raise my voice. My wife came and got some water, and she says, no wonder you sound different in your videos. It's because you don't talk loud enough. You don't sound like that at all. I'll see if I sound normal now. So, in this letter, June 5th, 1981, which I started covering before, and I'll cover it a little bit more now, since I just got some water myself because I'm losing my voice. I'm going to read the letter, not in its entirety, but part of it. He says, June 5th, 1981, Dear Bob. Oh, and this is by Clyde Perkins. He says, with my Bally system down for rewiring, I'll try an old typewriter. Please make the following changes. The reason he's trying to use an old typewriter is, I'll explain in a minute. Perkins Engineering Blue RAM. And he explains what that is. Then it's going to have the keyboard, which attaches to one of the I/O ports. It's going to have an operating system, which was available on tape. And eventually, it was called the Blue RAM operating system, and it sort of got split into two, and it became Blue RAM Basic, which was basically written by Jay Fenton and then modified a bit by John Perkins to work with the Astrocade. Well, not just to work, but to work Blue RAM Basic. It's also, I mentioned this already, that it's going to have a BCR controller, and I think BCR controllers still exist to this day. And a modem accessory attachment to work with the Livermore Star for telephone communication, as well as a Base 2 printer. And this is what I want to talk about here, mostly. Perkins Engineering, a modified motherboard is under development that allows high-res and medium-resolution programming. In these modes, the screen has 204 by 160, like the Intellivision, or 204 by 360 pixel for the finest detail of any low-price system. The system increases the IC count of the arcade from 34 to 73, which is a lot, and requires a larger transformer. And finally, they're also going to be releasing a expanded Blue RAM. So that covers this video, and then I'm going to move on to, I think, what is there, 2 folders, and they're pretty short. This folder is labeled Flyer, and let's dig into it. The whole point of this folder is the end result is going to be a front and back 8.5 by 14 inch flyer. This is scanned and it's available on Bally Alley. I didn't This is the cut and paste version though, so if you take a look, it is literally cut and paste. So there's tape holding this entire thing together. Some ads. This came out in 1980, so I think before the Astrocade was released. Take a look at what's on here. But we have what's coming up next is most of the stuff was put here. So we have something random art by Super Software, an L&M software ad, Blue Ram ad, a Viper Systems ad. What else we got? It talks about what's going to be, what's available in the Arcadian. There's a sample of a program. This is one of the more popular programs ever printed in the Arcadian. It's called Artillery Duel by John Perkins, and it was eventually actually reprinted in the Astro Basic version of the manual. And so yeah, 1980. By 1980 there was about 25 issues or so, and so this came out in this flyer was released in late 1980, around October-ish, I think. And so you could buy the first 10 volumes of the, not 10 volumes, the first volume of the Arcadian for $10, and the second volume of the Arcadian for $10. And if you wanted to, you could even call Bob Fabris, 6 to 10 Pacific Standard Time. He lived in California. Right, so what do we got here? We have a handwritten ad from Alternative Engineering, and he's saying what he would like to be having printed in this. And here is some of the stuff that you already saw. So here's the ad that Super Software wanted to have run. So that's that. Here is the handwritten version of this, and then here is the printed version of this. And this exactly was reprinted in that ad. And it just talks about the Viper system and what it is and what you get with it. What else? From the desk of George Moses, and he's talking about how his ragtime software is going to be released soon. What I think is interesting about this is it talks about price for that ad. We have here DNA Scott Norris. He did this issue, the music for many of the cartridges on the Astrocade. So I think these were ideas on how he wanted to have that flyer. And here's a price. 300 by 46 is $800, and this is in 1980. So yeah, I don't know how much he ended up paying, but that's pretty darn expensive. Here's his rough draft of what he wanted. So you'll see these a lot, rough drafts in the by Bob Fabris. Here we have something by Dieter Heinemann from October 17th, 1980. I'm not sure what this is, but I think he's talking about some of the programs that he had, and he wants an ad for it. I'll just read it. I haven't read anything much out of this one. I would like to order the Blue Ram. You were asking for programs, so I have included some that I've been playing around with. And these random boxes, electronic blanked, 3D corners, diffuse, and denominator. And most of these actually did end up getting printed in the Arcadian. And this electronic blanked is a really neat piece of video art. I like it quite a bit. And that wasn't archived, so I typed that one in a few years ago. If you want to try it, you can download it from archive, or not archive.org, but ballyalley.com. Here's an ad for L&M software. And at this time, I think that there wasn't the Astro Basic yet. So their games were all written for 300 baud Bally Basic. And I think 100% of their programs have been archived. And here we have The Mummy's Treasure, Ayatollah Dartboard, and more. Bill Luce was part of L&M software, and he says, hi Bob, we received your letter about the new ad, and he's talking about the flyer. Enclosed is our ad and reply, together with $25. Let's see. In addition, we would like to inquire if you would review our light show in the Arcadian. The piece of unique hardware requires a stereo player to operate. I don't think that was put in the Arcadian. At least I don't think so. So here's an ad that was cut out. It's the L&M ad, and this is, I think, let's see if we can find this here. So here's the L&M ad that was included here, and I can show you exactly how it was. It was right here. See how that fits perfectly? Look at that. Pretty darn cool, right? I mean, that is cut and paste. Yeah, done with a razor blade. I mean, this fits absolutely perfectly. You can see that not the entire ad was put in for space reasons, so he put some black around it, and yeah, so cool, cool. What else we have coming up here? Then we have something from Dieter Heinemann. He's talking about how he actually got his printer working with his Astrocade, so that's cool. And the final thing in here is some information from Bob Fabris, and he was took notes. That's it. That's all we have. We have one more folder coming up, and that is going to cover some schematics. And I didn't know enough about them, so I did some back research, and I have some additional information about it. So we'll cover that here in just a moment. This is the final folder that we're going to cover in full today. And this one we're going to spend more time on than you might imagine. There's only 4 sheets of paper in here, and this folder is called the Arcade Schematics Full Size. And I had to do some little bit of research for this one because I mean, I knew what it was. It's the schematics for an arcade game called Extra Bases, which is a sequel to Tornado Baseball. And Tornado Baseball was actually released on the Astrocade. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later because there's a frequently asked questions FAQ that I came up with in 2001, so 20 years ago, because this is now April 2021. And so I'll just show you what this is. These are the basic schematics for Extra Bases, which is an arcade game that had a trackball. It was a baseball game. But the 3 custom chips used in the Astrocade were used in this to get it into high-res mode. And we have here, that it's labeled as the I/O chip, and that's the I/O chip that was in the Astrocade. Going to the next page, this is all can be downloaded from my website and also and other websites too, because the arcade schematics and stuff like that are easy to find. So this is something I can hardly read. But on this part of the schematic, we have the custom address chip and the custom data chip. So all 3 of the custom chips that are in the Astrocade are available here. And we have more about Extra Bases. If you're really interested in the hardware breakdown of this, you can check it out. The first arcade game that used the 3 custom I/O chips was Seawolf 2. That came out in 1978 in the arcade, and that actually is also the first color game ever released in the arcade. And oftentimes you will hear that Galaxian was the first arcade game, but that is not so. So I'm going to cover a little bit about this here in a moment. This is going to be the fact called arcade games based around the Astrocade chipset. So we're still looking at the arcade schematics full size for Extra Bases, but instead of looking at that, this is the first time I think I've done this in any of my videos, and I'll be talking about a FAQ, frequently asked questions, that I wrote and compiled in, let's see, November 24th, 2001, and then it was updated in 2006, and then updated again in 2016. And what this covers is it covers the 6 games that were released in the arcade that have the Astrocade chipset. Well, the first games that I knew of. They are Seawolf 2 from 1978, Extra Bases, Space Zap, Wizard of War, Gorf, and Robbie Roto. These 6 games, these 6 games all have the 3 custom chips that are used in the Astrocade. And they are the custom I/O chip, the data chip, and the address chip. And Seawolf 2, as I was saying earlier, is the first game that had color in the arcade. And these are all color games. Seawolf was released on the Astrocade as just plain Seawolf. Extra Bases was not, but its previous game was. Space Zap was released as it was released in the Astrocade. I'm forgetting what it was called. Wizard of War was released as The Incredible Wizard. Space Fortress. Space Zap was released as Space Fortress. And Gorf wasn't released, and Robbie Roto wasn't released. And if you get a chance, I do some coverage, like an hour-long video on just the game Gorf. I'll try to remember to put links in my show notes. And then there was 4 games that I was informed of in 2006, and some of these came out, and some of them did not, but they also used the Bally chipset all the way up until 1985. This is Demons and Dragons, which is a prototype that wasn't released, and can't really be played properly because I think it uses an analog controller. Oh, and something that I should have mentioned about Extra Bases, this game doesn't use a joystick. Extra bases in the arcade that use the Bally chipset uses a trackball. Professor Pac-Man, which is a video quiz game, and then 2 arcade games that I think you actually like have a puck that you throw down the screen, or throw down this like little, I don't know, table, almost like hockey or something. I don't know. But I wanted to bring up a couple of things, and I'll show you because the system is called the Bally Arcade, and most people, you know, they still call it the Astrocade because that was the later name, but it's called the Bally Arcade because so many arcade games were released for it, even though people don't think about it because these games are forgotten, long forgotten. But the first arcade game that ever used a CPU, Gunfight, was released in the Astrocade in 1978. That game came out and used the 8080 processor. Amazing Maze was also released on the system. Dots and 280 Zap was released, but that was called just 280 Zap. Seawolf, but it was actually this, let's see, Seawolf 2 that was released on the Astrocade. Let's see, Tornado Baseball was released. Checkmate, that's built into the system, as is Gunfight. We have Dogpatch, by the way, is one of my favorite games for the Astrocade, and it's very simple. None of these games were. Clowns was. Seawolf 2 was, but as Seawolf. Space Invaders was released as Astro Invaders. Extra Bases was not. Let's see, then we have Space Zap and Wizard of War, which were released. Pac-Man, which wasn't released, but they did make Muncher. Robbie Roto, none of these games were released, but they're circled because they have the Astrocade chipset in there. And for those who are hardware aware, I'm going to read a couple of pieces of information that were posted. And just really a clip from someone who posted this in, I think, 2001 about the games that were released. This is by Tony Miller. He passed away a few years ago, but he worked at, I think, DNA and helped design the Astrocade. And he posted this to the group, and he says, this is when I made this chip, or not this chip, and I was asking members of the group if they could help me, the discussion group. And he says, a good portion of these, and he's talking about these games here, these early ones especially, he says, a good portion of these, most if not all of the 8080 based black and white games, were done by nutting. These include Gunfight, Seawolf, Dawson 280 Zap, Checkmate, etc. The hardware for these was also done by nutting. A close inspection of the schematics will reveal discrete versions of the flopper, shifter, etc. used in the data chip, and that's the custom data chip. And he says, Space Invaders was a Japanese license, as was Bosconian, Galaga, etc. Another reason for the paucity, which means the lack of BPA-based games was the popularity of Pac-Man et al. During the same time period. Now, it's interesting to note here that Gunfight was somehow, I don't really understand the background of it, but it was, I wouldn't say plagiarized, that's not the right word, but a lot of it was, the guts of it sort of were rehashed and redone a little bit, I think. I don't know the background. If anyone knows, and if there's a book written about it, I'd love to know. There ought to be about, but the Gunfight sort of ended up getting in, they're making, a lot of the parts ended up making their way into Space Invaders. And that's it. That's all I'm going to cover. I'm going to show what's coming up in the next episode. And after that, we have a few more folders to go through, and that is it. So we're going to, if you're not interested in knowing what's coming up and you want it to be a surprise, come back for the next video. Otherwise, maybe 5 or 6 minutes left, and then we'll be done. The 5 folders that will be covered in the next episode are Anderson et al. Archive Storage, Astro Management, March 20th, 1981, Inquiries, Letters, Orders, and then there's a folder that has a couple of newsletters and some stuff from a Bally that is for dealers. And there was actually a poster in here, which isn't in here anymore because I tried to straighten it out, and it's now wrapped up in a little ball. Not a ball, in a tube, so that it doesn't get any more creases in it. And so I'll go through these very quickly, and then we are going to close out. In this first folder, Anderson et al., we have ads by Anderson Research and Design. That's Craig Anderson. Archival storage and basic maintenance. Oh, so I thought this was considered archival storage because they this was a storage folder, but actually I think it's an article that was written by Craig that was not published, or maybe it was summarized in the Arcadian on how to store your tapes and things like that. We have a letter from Jeffrey Cochran, not sure who that is. Continuing on, we have a handwritten letter about tape dropout. This is from Robert Hilfrending, and finally recording failures, an ad that was going to be run in the Arcadian. And we'll cover that in more detail in the next episode, of course. Astrocade management. Here is a nice cardboard. I really like this, by the way. This is from Bally. I'm going to get into it later, but this is cardboard and it opens up, and this is an early ad for the Bally Arcade with a really great picture on the back. And this was from a dealer. The dealer was SFP. Here's some photocopies of manuals that I think were going to be coming out. Z-Grass computer keyboard, some interesting facts about that. This is stapled together. Astrovision Incorporated, a great future with a great product, sales meeting March 20th and 21st. I think I have some information about that meeting. Yeah, check it out. We'll go into that at another detail. The people that were present there are actually marked here, which is kind of cool. Bog Ogden. Yeah, cool. Astrovision information continues. I'm going to try to skip around. Spectre Systems. So Spectre Systems, of course, was made up by Brett Bilbrey and others. Some more information from Spectre Systems. Lots of addresses. I'm not sure what they're for. And we have, this is from an ad that was eventually put out. I'm not sure too much about that. Dave Nutting Associates Astrovision Basic Summary talks about what was added to Astro Basic and over the original Bally Basic. And a letter from George Moses. Getting on, we have inquiries. I'm not really sure too much about this. Some letters. What's this? Oh, A Star is Born. I know what this is. Oh, this is an original Arcadian that was sent out to someone and was returned. So Abraham Fiesberg had this sent out to him January 21st, 1981, but it got returned because he had moved and he lived in Brooklyn, New York. I completely knocked my camera about, but I was talking about here's another person. So these two people had their Arcadians returned to them. This one is from January 21st, and this one is also from January 21st. And yeah, it'd be neat to donate these to somewhere, but this is what you'd get in the mail. You would look like this once it arrived to you. So if it had one, so yeah, pretty cool. Stapled shut in two areas to keep it shut, and this is probably 4 or 5 pages long. I don't know what this is. A video play. Someone who wants to carry the Arcadian. I don't know. Here's some addresses, labels probably. And that's all the rest that's in here. Oh, and stamps. It looks like. Yeah. These are all stamps. All right, and continuing. Second to last folder we'll be looking at in the next issue is letters and orders. So Perkins Engineering, and these are people who ordered it, and that's it. And the next one we have a very, very short newsletter, but this one's interesting because it was only distributed to 8 different places in the Chicago area, and it's actually for, I think, stores that carried VHS tapes and beta tapes. And it's 8 pages long. I'll flip through it later, but he talks about, or not he, but they cover almost a 2-page spread on the Bally Arcade. So they must have been a dealer as well. So this is pretty cool to look at. Then this is an issue from Byte Magazine, and they cover the Arcadian. Well, they don't cover it, but there's an ad for it. And the Byte issue from 1981, April. And earlier in this video, you saw the cut and paste version of this. So the cut and paste version of this turns into this when it got mailed out. So this would have been folded over in 3, and then someone's address would have been written there, and you would have gotten it in the mail. And finally, this is the dealer demo or dealer kit for dealers. The only thing left in here is a Bally Professional Arcade from Astrovision. So this is their first, I think, catalog. Also was in here as a couple other things. They got separated, but one of them was a big poster, like 3 feet by 2 feet, maybe even bigger. And I have that in my garage now. Maybe I'll try to bring it in or insert a picture of it. But that's it. So we'll sign out here. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. This one's been a little interesting to make. I've taken several breaks during the making of this one, which I haven't done before. I have to save my voice. I feel like I'm losing it. My wife said earlier that I'm actually talking very softly, so maybe that's why I sound different to her. But it's weird talking to myself, and at the same time, I don't know, I think it's hurting my throat because I'm actually trying to temper my voice a bit. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy coming back for more. There's many more to come. Next up, we'll be covering everything I've just talked about in the last few minutes. And I hope that you're having fun with your Astrocade. Turn it on if you have one. Emulate it if you don't. Thanks for watching.